Namaste. After a very long time, we are beginning on Politics 360. Last time we interviewed Mr. JVC Sriram, who's with us today as well. He spoke us about the largest vaccination drive happening in India. But we also mentioned that he is a political commentator. His predictions on Tamil Nadu elections came true. He did say popular votes would go to DMK. And he specifically predicted that Modakurichi, a constituency in Erode district, will go to BJP. And it did happen. And he also said that Annamalai would make a lasting impact in this election in Aravakurichi. And he said Vidudalai Sirithaigal Katchi, run by Mr. Thirumavadavan, will lose its strong bastion of Kattamanattu. When all of this happened quite visibly, so that is more than enough for us to have Mr. Sriram again as the right person to talk on elections. So this time Politics 360 is going to be on, Uttar Pradesh and Punjab. So these two states are very critical at this point in time. Number one, Uttar Pradesh. If BJP could win again, like how it won in 2017, it means that is a signal that BJP is again sweeping the 2024 parliamentary elections. And as far as Punjab is concerned, it is one of the last bastions which Congress is holding. Thanks to the image of Captain Amarinder Singh. But given the scenario, in every Congress ruled state, there is a tussle going on. So therefore, elections in these two states in 2022 is going to be the most closely watched. Fate of two major national political parties, BJP and Congress, depends upon these two elections. So Sriram, welcome to the show. It's always a pleasure hosting you again and again.
Namaste. Yes.
Yeah, so
Pleasure to be here
Sriram,
too.
before we could go, I wanted to quickly ask you. So last time when we spoke, we did discuss that the vaccination drive has taken a halt, and why is it so? And we've been hearing that throughout the country, the drive is back, and yesterday we made a record vaccination of nearly 8 million. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, see, it was on very expected lines that the vaccination, I think we spoke just on the day when the Prime Minister announced that the center is going to take over the procurement process, and that is where we started. So, as expected, the vaccination drive, the largest vaccination drive in the world, commenced yesterday in the sense free for all. There is 75% of the people who decide to take it free, irrespective of the age group. And I think it was a wonderful start, scintillating start, I would say. Wonderful is not the right adjective, probably it's an underplaying adjective. So it's a scintillating start. All the people who probably or naysayers had any doubt on it, I think a statement has been made to them. Uh, and immediately people started asking, can they maintain 87 lakhs? 8.7 million is what happened yesterday. So today by around 6 o'clock, we are already crossed 550 lakhs, which is around more than 5 million. I don't know the exact data. After that, I've been busy. So what it shows is that there would be a consistent, continuous, sustained effort to keep this vaccination process on. We are on the verge of touching 300 million in the next few days. We are at around 285 million, if I'm right. So 30 crores we will be achieving in the span of just say maybe by this week or the beginning of the next week. Already there are talks that around 1.2 crores of vaccination can happen in a continuous manner. And what Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, up to an extent Uttar Pradesh, even Rajasthan, Assam, all these states have shown that it is possible. Before that, on Sunday, opposition ruled Andhra Pradesh, did 13.5 lakhs vaccination. Okay, all this points to the narrative is no more going to be I don't have vaccine and excuses and complaints. Instead of that, the actual process can start. So that's a great news. And as expected, I think for your viewers, I think we cleared quite a lot of things, myths regarding the second wave and the vaccination. And I'm glad to share that it has commenced in an amazing manner. So that's all I would like to say at this point in time.
That's really interesting. That's quite affirming to know. If we are going to vaccinate 1.2 crore people continuously every day, that's a massive vaccination drive. Not even large is also an understatement. This is the most massive vaccination drive that ever happened in the world. And of course, we have to, the credit goes to the central government for taking it forward, and still they are expecting more vaccines from different countries to support it more and more. So that's
Exactly. We may not have, you see, not on an everyday basis you can do a 1 crore or 1.2 crores. But to me, I think, contrary to what the government has been maintaining, that by December 31st, everybody will be vaccinated. I would be very happy if we can even vaccinate 70% of the population of our country by December 31st. I would be very, very satisfied and happy about it. Although there will be opposition which will be saying that no, you promised 259 doses, 2 crore doses by December 31st. Yes, production can happen, but inoculation may not be able to happen considering the density of population. And after a stage, after 60 crores vaccinations are done, certainly there will be a vaccine hesitancy which will come. So we will have to work on those areas also. It's not going to be a road of highways. There will be pits and potholes. There will be crusts and troughs, and there would be challenges. But I'm sure that we will be able to overcome all those challenges and reach the final destination and win against the war against the COVID.
that's interesting. So now let us jump on to the topic of the day.
Yeah,
So we are here to talk on politics, Uttar
yeah,
Pradesh and Punjab.
right.
Yeah, so first I'm going on with Punjab.
Okay.
So first and foremost, Sriram, what is going to be the impact of the so-called farmer protest in Punjab elections? Because Punjab is the place from where all the protesters eventually came from, right? So how is the impact going to be?
See, let us understand what is the situation in Punjab, which is not the same situation outside of Punjab. Because we need to understand, and I have had the conversations ever since this law was enacted, and then it was being protested by the so-called farmers who are not farmers first and foremost, with some of the eminent personalities in the agriculture sector, like Sri Chengal Reddy, who happens to be from Hyderabad but has been a chief advisor to the consortium of Indian farmers. He has worked with some of the great leaders, Sharad Joshi, MS Swaminathan, who's a very influential voice, and I've gathered a lot of information. Punjab is a situation where it is not the farmers who are coming and protesting. It is the intermediaries, you call as haritias or brokers. For the sake of our English viewers, we'll call them as intermediary or broker, who have a very important role, who had a very important role in the entire supply chain of the farming thing. And they are the ones who are lending money to farmer at any point of time, right? And without any collateral, without any security, and they buy the crop, they sell, they are basically traders. Now, these three laws which has been enacted by the central government literally makes these people jobless. And that is the reason why you saw protests emanating from Punjab. You did not see farmers from Tamil Nadu or Kerala or Bihar or Madhya Pradesh or Telangana or Andhra Pradesh coming and protesting. First and foremost, let's also understand a farmer cannot protest. Why do I say that? A farmer has to get up early in the morning, because I am a consultant with farming companies. I'm a consultant even now at this point in time. I'm a consultant with one of the India's leading organic farming company. Okay. And I've been associated with the farm sector since 2008 to various seed companies. I've traveled to the length and breadth of the country, spoke with different people in my capacity as a consultant for farming companies. Okay. So I wear a different hat. That is my bread and butter as a training consultant. So a farmer, you need to understand, gets up in the morning. He has to take care of his land. He has to till his land. He has to take care of his cattle. And by around 10:30 till 10:30, 11 o'clock, he's extremely busy and occupied. Even you can't even meet a farmer. And then he relaxes. Then he wants to know what is the price going on. In fact, if you ask, even in Tamil Nadu, from where you come from, if you ask, if even for a wedding occasion, the entire farming family will not be able to come and attend. Only some people will come for the family. Some of them will say that, no, my parents have to stay back at home, farmland, because it's a 24/7 job, which we need to understand. So the protest has been confined. It was politically motivated, driven by the leftist organizations. I've written a detailed blog on it in the month of February. And as a result of which, this protest, the impact may be there in UP, we'll speak about it later. It is clearly on Punjab, that too the wealthy intermediary broking people are the ones who are impacted. And their protest will continue. They have got political support, they have got the financial muscle, and their intent and agenda is clear, and they do not want to come for a negotiation because there is no middle path involved in it. If you have to reform the farming community, these laws are essential. And for your information, these laws were promised even in the DMK manifesto in 2016. Today, they are protesting against it. That's why I made a video in December and I said, some parties do not even know what goes into their manifesto. Okay, that's a typical case of it. Either they've been wrongly informed, or just because it's enacted now by the government led by Narendra Modi, so they are going against, I don't know. So there is going to be an impact of the farming community, the so-called farming community, which is not, but dominated by the intermediaries, in the Punjab elections. And we also need to understand, if there are 4 states in India where the popularity of Narendra Modi is at the lowest, they are Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, up to an extent, Tamil Nadu, and Punjab would top the list. I'm going for the reverse order. So number 1 state which has always had an issue or a challenge has been Punjab. So BJP starts with a disadvantage, there is no doubt about that.
So now even the most popular leader of Punjab seems to be lacking support from his own party, Captain Amarinder Singh himself.
Okay. Can I safely call him as the tallest state leader of Congress party?
Of course.
But the tallest state level leader. There was a time where Y.S. Rajashekar Reddy was the tallest Congress leader, as far as from state is concerned. Today he is the tallest. And you have a ecosystem in Congress today which is unwilling to accept a regional satrap or a regional leader of such a stature. And that is where the challenge and problem starts. So Amarinder Singh is a very, very independent thinker. In fact, he was the one who went and told in 2019 election, after Sam Pitroda's comment, saying that do not even talk about those things. Ask that guy to go and sit in the house for the next 15 days. This is the kind of language he used. I don't care who he is. Let him go and sit in the house. Because he is somebody who's an independent thinker. And this kind of thinking, and the party won the election on the face of Amarinder Singh. And you need to understand that from Mumbai to Amritsar, if you have to travel after 2014 election, you will not find a single MP, Congress MP. And the only person who won was Amarinder Singh against Arun Jaitley. So you know the kind of support he has as far as the ground is concerned. Even though Congress is held responsible for 1984 Sikh riots, which is one of the biggest genocide against a community, Amrinder Singh stands tall as a Congress leader. But even without Congress, he would be a big leader. And Congress is not willing to give that kind of stature and position. That is the reason why they decided not to appoint him as the leader of opposition, right? When somebody had beaten the Arun Jaitley, not the leader of opposition, leader of Congress, they appointed Mallikarjun Kharge in 2014. Okay, there is a history behind it. The history is they do not want any one of these leaders to grow big. And that's the reason why you have Himanta Biswa Sharma coming to BJP from the Congress. That is why YS Jagan floated his own party. That is why Mamata Banerjee even left. There are ample examples, and that is what Amrinder Singh is facing now.
That's really good to know. So now, along with Amarinder Singh, there was one other party which was bigger than Congress once upon a time, but eventually Congress turned out to be their equal competitor, thanks to people like Amarinder Singh. That is Akali Dal I'm talking about. Okay, and now Akali Dal and Bahujan Samaj Party with Mayawati. So they have announced an alliance. When we see Mayawati made an impact in the early 90s, if I'm not wrong, 92 and 97 elections, if I'm not wrong. So they had a sizable vote bank, but from 17% it came to 13%, from 13% it went to nowhere. And with Akali Dal also, they've been losing quite often. Even though they won in 2012, they couldn't hold back to their home grounds even in 2017. And now, right after this came up, right after this farm bill came up, Akali Dal left NDA, and now they are in a partnership with BSP. So together, I would consider both of them as not a very significant players anymore. But what is their impact going to be in this election?
See, you have got to know Punjab was a state which was very similar to Kerala and Tamil Nadu in terms of voting the incumbent out. It changed in 2012. But ever since 2012, the dynasty politics played by Badals, where you know pretty well that the entire family is into the party. It is again another party run by family. And combined to that is the drug mafia, where the Akali Dal was, it was told that Akali Dal leaders were involved in it. As a result of which they lost badly, and I don't think they have got the goodwill back. Yes, BSP coming together will bring Dalits vote also, but to what extent I do not know. It is going to be a multi-cornered contest. You will have Congress at one side. You will have Akali Dal, BSP combined, which would be the second. You will have AAP, and you will also have BJP. So these are the four players who are going to play it out in Punjab. Because why I say AAP is because Punjab has got a tradition of left, communist. Harikishan Singh Surjit was one of the tallest communist leaders who hailed from Punjab. CPI had, but the point is the party did not develop. The ideology was there. Party did not develop. So AAP could attract those voters also. In fact, some of the opinion polls in 2017 gave AAP even a chance of winning the election, which would not happen, which will not happen this time also. Okay. So Akali Dal had not lost its ground, has not regained its lost ground, which is an important point to note. I don't see it regaining at this point in time. And the BJP unfortunately carried the sins of Akali Dal from 2012, and that is the reason why 2014 even Arun Jaitley lost. You can't, Arun Jaitley could have contested actually in Delhi. In fact, in 2014, I made a statement also that Arun Jaitley should have contested in a safe seat in Delhi where he could have easily won. Instead of it, he wanted to make a statement and went to Amritsar, and unfortunately, he lost.
Okay, my next question were on Aam Aadmi Party and BJP. So you
Yeah,
answered a part of it. But
yeah.
let me ask you one thing. You said uh, people with left leanings, communist leanings, support
Hmm.
Aam Aadmi Party there.
Hmm.
Okay, so that is one reason why they could garner around 20 to 23% of the vote bank way back in 2017,
Hmm.
right? So, will they able to make the same kind of impact again?
See, the lack of leadership. Delhi people voted for Arvind Kejriwal. Whether you like him, you dislike him, I have my own ideological differences with him, and I also have a lot of personal differences with the way kind of politics he plays. You have a guy like Amarinder Singh as a leader, and certainly the people of Punjab would be looking at who against Amarinder Singh. Up, are they going to throw up any big name? Which they have not. Would AK allow another leader to flourish under his nose? Never. Never. That is the Achilles heel of AAP. AAP will not be able to throw up any other leader, and you cannot be a chief minister of 3 states. Given a choice, you would like to be a chief minister of Delhi, Punjab, and Haryana, and say that I'm a Punjabi by so and so, I'm a Haryanavi by birth, and I'm a Delhiite by my blood. And he can create all those kind of narratives he can set. But only fools will believe such kind of narratives, and he will not be able to do that.
To know. And now I'm moving on to Uttar Pradesh. So we
Before you move
covered,
on to Uttar Pradesh, I think you
yeah.
have not asked one question, which I think you should ask, is about Navjot Singh Sidhu.
Oh yes, Mr. Sidhu
I'm
is
sorry, because
known
you
for
can't
all the
talk.
wrong reasons.
Yeah, all the wrong things. Even when he was in BJP, I was not a big fan of him. Although, as a nationalist, I do have my soft corner for BJP. Sidhu is feeling extremely uncomfortable now. Amrinder does not want him to grow. Because Amrinder, if you remember, made a statement in 2017, if my memory serves right, that this is the last election he's going to fight. It was an emotional call also he made. If I'm right, I'm not sure. This is what I've heard and read. And so probably people like Sidhu nursed an ambition that after 5 years, I will come into contention. But Captain has decided to stay. Okay. As you say, the older the wine gets, the tastier it becomes. He also knows about that. So he's not going to give a room for Sidhu. Sidhu is getting suffocated in Congress. BJP will not even touch him with a barge pole. He wants to be the chief ministerial candidate of AAP. Will it happen? Can it happen? Big question mark. But that's one development I would like to wait and watch. Because he can't go to Akali Dal. I don't see him going to Akali Dal. BSP may not be a right party for him. And BJP is not even going to look at him for the kind of statements he made, and it doesn't bring anything to the table as far as BJP is concerned. And he's getting suffocated in Congress. So, does he float a party? If he floats a party, it'll be nothing. He may not even get a deposit. Like what happened to Kamala Hassan may not even happen to Navjot Singh Sidhu. Okay, but if he goes to AAP, then he becomes the face of AAP. Then, for all you know, it could be a contest between Congress and AAP, with Akali Dal even relegated to the third position, which I don't see it happening. I would still see Akali Dal coming in the second position in terms of both vote percentage and seat percentage. Yes.
So next, the most politically divided state, I would say.
I
So
will
with
call it as a politically vibrant state. Don't call it as a politically divided state.
okay,
It's a vibrant
politically
state.
vibrant. Yeah. So with Jitin Prasada joining BJP, it is speculated that a Brahmin resurgence is to happen in Uttar Pradesh. So, what are your thoughts on that?
See, I had been to Uttar Pradesh last year in 2020. When the COVID was happening, I was there in Uttar Pradesh. Okay. During my farming, this thing only. Okay. Now, there was a murmur going around that some of the Brahmins were not very, very happy to see Yogi as the chief minister, which was surprising because I've heard about this, but I went on the ground and saw there were two kinds of narratives playing around in UP, which you need to understand. The people of UP had voted for Modi, and Modi is the most popular leader of UP. So that's why I would not call it as a politically divided state. His popularity is, if I said Punjab is lowest, UP would be one of the states where it is highest. Bihar, UP, these are places where he is revered as God. Let me tell you. And I also add a narrative that it is these two people whom they love. When I spoke to Nishad's community, the voting community, if you may be aware of, they were all saying that, sir, BJP and other party, there is no big difference. But बीजेपी के लिए ऊपर से दो लीडर है, either Uttar Pradesh pe or Delhi pe. We adore them. Okay, so that is the second thing which you need to keep in mind. The third was that a section of Brahmins were resenting against the rise of Yogi Adityanath. So these are the three spectrums through which you need to look at the UP elections. Because 2017 was won by BJP not on the face of Yogi, it was won on the face of Modi. Modi said, vote for BJP. It is a vote for me. I will take care of you. That was the kind of narrative he gave. This time it cannot be that. You need to have the vote for, yeah, Modi will play a very important role, but Yogi is also coming into picture.
Okay, so well, while talking about Punjab, you did say that other than Punjab, the farmer protest, the so-called farmer protest, is going to have major impact in other states, and you said Uttar Pradesh could be one of them, right? So we've also been hearing that Western Uttar Pradesh is one region where BJP's progress is like pretty insignificant in the recent times. So, does it mean that BJP is losing Western Uttar Pradesh completely?
No, no. I don't think the Jats are going to leave BJP lock, stock, and barrel and go anywhere. You need to also understand that although he had not won elections, he had not created any big sensation in the last 5 to 6 years' time. We need to also understand that uh, Ajit Singh, the son of Charan Singh, is no more there. He was there in Western Uttar Pradesh. So he was a galvanizing force. Okay. His son, because he himself was an IIT, computer engineer from working in IBM, came, but adapted himself to Indian politics. I don't think his son is going to adapt it as well as his father. Okay. So I'm not very sure about how it's going to pan out in Western UP. Western UP, they did, RLD brought some votes, either it was to the BJP or to the Congress or to Samajwadi Party, because Ajit Singh was a great, mover and shaker. Not the mover and shaker in the politics. He moves around alliances and parties. Morning he will be in one party, in another evening he will be in another coalition. That kind of a leader he was. He's no more there. So, and he's not being talked about, because people feel that, oh, no, he didn't create any great things, shakes. No, but he had a sizable vote population. Okay. So, Jats are not going to move lock, stock, and barrel towards Congress. They're not going to move towards SP. They're not going to move towards BSP completely. So, even if there is a fragmentation or movement, it will be divided. It will be a divided vote for any party. So it will not hurt BJP in a way which the cephologists and Luton's media is portraying it. Hope I've answered that question to you. Because they feel that it is the Jatland, Muzaffarnagar and all those places, the Jatland which will take you to Lucknow. Sorry, it will not happen.
So now let us shift towards Eastern Uttar Pradesh. in 2014 general elections and the 2019 general elections as well, it is believed that the Kurmi vote bank played a major role, which was brought in by Apna Dal. And now the party got divided and it is headed as Apna Dal Sonelal by Mr. Sonelal's daughter Anupriya Patel. Right. So will that impact? In 2017 again, BJP won mostly in eastern Uttar Pradesh rather than any other regions. So does it mean that Kurmi vote bank is going to help BJP a lot more in
What
this
I'm hearing
election?
is Apna Dal is going to come back to NDA. The mother and daughter is going to unite. Already back channel tax talks are going on. So they will have, you will not be surprised if even she gets a ministry in the next cabinet expansion. Uh, so I don't think the Kurmis, the Nishas. See, the idea of UP is you need to have that united spectrum of Hindu voters. Now, the united spectrum of Hindu voters is what is known as the forward caste, the Thakurs, all inclusive Baniyas, the Brahmins, plus the OBCs, non Yadav OBCs, predominantly even Yadavs voted for BJP in 2019, and non Jatav Dalits and ST. Now, this, the chunk, I'm not saying everybody, this is called as the United Spectrum of Hindu Voters, USHV, okay, which is what is called by many people. Okay, I think Praveen Patel was the one who started this whole terminology called as USHV. So BJP will do anything and everything possible in terms of accommodating the allies to ensure that there is no big dent of this USHV. If it means accommodating, Apna Dal in the Union Cabinet, they would.
And finally, one question. So, with Brahmins not being happy with Yogi Adityanath, is there a possibility of he getting replaced as a chief ministerial candidate?
I don't think so. See, because Yogi Adityanath is a very tall leader. Now, I don't want to get into this, after Modi who and all those stuff. I don't want to get into all those. These are all very hypothetical things. But we need to understand that Yogi is a very, very tall leader who has established himself as a very strong administrator. We saw what is the kind of COVID impact he had brought about, on the ground. The cases have come from 35,000, where Tamil Nadu and UP were at the same numbers at one point of time, and now Tamil Nadu is around 7,000, 8,000, but UP has come into 3 digits. And maybe I'll not be even surprised if I see 2 digit number. Vaccination, a state which has tremendous vaccine hesitancy, vaccination is happening. Okay. So I don't see any replacement of Yogi Adityanath at this point in time. They will face the election under the leadership of Yogi Adityanath. Brahmins, there are enough Brahmin leaders. I think there would be a lot of reach out which will happen. Jiten Prasad is a good addition. Yes, there are some journalists who will keep asking Jiten Prasad, when did he win an election? Even when Rahul Gandhi is losing an election in UP, I don't see what is the point in these people asking about Jiten Prasad. Okay. Because it was happening across the board, across the spectrum. Sonia Gandhi, even I'm telling you, even if Raebareli, if BJP had given a good fight, even Sonia Gandhi would have lost the 2019 election. Okay. Such is the kind of disenchantment which had happened. So as a result of which, that's important. And also we need to keep in mind that as much as SP is trying to take complete ownership and control of the Muslim votes in Uttar Pradesh, Congress is reaching out to Muslims one side. OIC would certainly be there in Uttar Pradesh and is hardline minority campaign would attract traction. So if any one of them thinks, because if Congress will have to, for SP to do very well, Congress will have to do what they did in West Bengal. Because I'm trying to elongate the whole thing so that give you a perspective. Okay. So we'll have to do what they did in West Bengal of running away from the elections, which I don't think will happen because Priyanka Gandhi is investing her time and effort. So she would divide Muslim votes. Okay. she may get a little bit of Brahmin votes also. So, which means that Brahmin votes may not go to BSP, which was what the case was in 2007 when BSP came to power. That's not going to happen. So, and SP would not be a choice for most of the Brahmin community. So, you would see, that's why I'm saying that BJP may not score an encore or a tsunami like what they did in 2017, but they would perform reasonably well to ensure that a stable government is formed by Yogi Adityanath.
Okay, in a way, that does give jitters to BJP already because they have to reflect the same numbers as they did in 2017 to give a message that 2024 is ours too. So that's going to be a really tough fight in ensuring a tsunami, a big wave, like what happened in that day.
No, Arvind, it's not that way. See, because when you're ruling a, when you're a party which is coming on an expectancy, incumbency, there is a lot of difference. For all we know, BJP may do exceedingly well and cross even the 2017 figures. We don't know because we are months away from the election. We do not know how many people will be by that time. Probably if 80, 90 crore of people are vaccinated, and if everybody in UP is vaccinated, almost 70% of the people are vaccinated. COVID is no more an issue. Okay, investments are coming in. Rowdyism has been brought under control. Administration has been good. You don't know. They may score. At the same, I'm saying even if they do not win the 300, 325 kind of seats like they did in 2017, nobody should get jittery because state elections are different, central elections are different. At the end of the day, you try to fight state elections as local as possible, make issues as local as possible. Okay, so that's what you need to understand. And UP would resonate to local issues. Okay, and there's also a tremendous caste equation which came into picture in UP. You can't do politics in UP without caste and social engineering. And so as a result of which, there is no jittery here. It is simply put across, even in Gujarat, 2017 in Gujarat was not the same 2012. In fact, in 2007, Modi had a bigger victory than in 2012. Correct? Because when you're an incumbent government, you will have anti-incumbency against local MLA, you will have factional rivalries at the local level. So those things can happen. But those things will not affect your central campaign. Okay. On an altogether a different note, when I'm speaking with politicians in Karnataka, they are telling me, sir, assembly elections will be a big fight. But come 2024, Karnataka will vote in one voice because Modi, goes taller than anybody else. So that's what you need to understand. So a Delhi election, AAP won. But can AAP do the same thing in the parliamentary elections in 2024? No, it cannot. We have seen it cannot happen it did not happen in 2019 too, right? AAP was relegated to third position, but within 8 to 9 months, they came back to power. So you can't combine state elections with central elections. A victory in UP, I would be absolutely happy about it.
So much happening. And along with UP and Punjab, we have many other states, Manipur, Goa, every other state is coming up. So 2022 is going to be more interesting. And added to that, we have the presidential elections coming up in 2022. So, which means, is it going to be Ramnath Govind again? So, we've been hearing from the opposition camp that Sharad Pawar will be nominated as the presidential candidate. So, and from the BJP side, there are big names too. So, I don't know. So, 2022 altogether is going to be a very interesting year for all of us, right from the beginning till the end. So, let us wait and watch. So, possibly we'll have more interviews with you, Sriram. So you're the political nerd here, so we would need you every time.
Sure, Arvind. My only request before I conclude this interview is there is no scientific evidence to prove that the third wave is going to come. Okay? There's a Delta plus variant which has come. I really wish that it doesn't come. But I've always believed in times of pandemic, it is better to be cautious than to be optimistic. Okay? And there are also reports from various doctors saying that, unconfirmed again, there is no evidence for it, that the third wave could hit the children and the people less than 18 years of age. Okay. Now, there is a reason behind why they are saying what they are saying. It's not that they are saying without any substance, but there is no evidence, but there is a substance. When a majority of the population, particularly in the urban areas, have already been vaccinated, so the people who have taken the vaccine, when they go out, they may contract the virus if they are going to interact with people forgetting the COVID-19 protocols. What could happen is the virus could enter into their body, but they will be completely asymptomatic. 78 to 79%, 80% of people who get virus after vaccination would not even know that virus has entered into their body, because antibodies which are generated by the vaccines would fight against those viruses. But when they come back home, they would be interacting with their children. They would be interacting with people who are 18 minors who are not vaccinated. And they become potentially the people who will catch that infection. Okay. So that is the reason why I'm taking this opportunity. In fact, in every interview, I'm taking the opportunity to tell this, that just because you're vaccinated, that does not mean that we are out of the woods yet. Please avoid travel only when necessary. Town. And even when you're in town, SMS. Okay. Sanitize, mask, social distancing. Social distancing is even more important. And when you come back home, take all the precautions. And if you think you have been to places which probably are susceptible, stay at a distance from the people in your home who are not vaccinated. We cannot afford a third wave. My sincere request. We saw how it was in second wave. We can't afford a third wave. Neither can we in terms of health infrastructure, not in terms of economically, not in terms of politically, not in terms of financially, not in terms of anything. So it's no more in the hands of the government. It's in your hands. It's in my hands. It's in our hands. Take care. Thank you so much, Arvind.
Thank you so much. But all those positive thoughts, reaffirming statements, we can really be assured that such uncertainties won't come to us again and again. So it is in the hand, as you said, it is in our hands to ensure we all are safe. So we will ensure that. So thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Arvind. Thanks a lot.